Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the StandUp Speakeasy. I am your host, Rethne, and every single week, I talk to comics from all over the country, and this is part two of a previous one because Andrew has accomplished so much that we had to squeeze it all into two episodes. So this is fantastic. So, ladies and gentlemen, coming back to the stage is Andrew. Hey, Andrew, how are you?
Hey, thank you for having me. I was shadowy. Hello. We got Reggie here also.
Reggie, awesome.
Yeah, you want to see? Hey, Reg. There we go.
Hey, Reggie, how are you?
Oh, he's doing all right. Hey. Oh. Hello.
Awesome. I love dogs and animals in general, so it's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So we'll pick off where we left off last time. So you co-founded the Empire Biscuit Comedy Festival, and which was covered by the New York Times. And what was it like to bring that all together and being covered by the New York Times?
So it was very, very cool. I came up with the idea with another comedian, Brandon Scott Wolf, when we were on a bus together on the way to a festival in upstate New York, and we were like, oh, a lot of these, this one, the one we were going to was good, but kind of a lot of festivals sometimes are sort of, they hold a festival kind of, I guess, because they sort of just find whatever locations they can. We were like, what if you did a whole festival just in one venue? And I forget exactly how. I think a friend from high school co-owned this, or co-founded. I think he might have actually moved on by the time that we did it, but this place called the Empire Biscuits, and we sorry, I'm getting distracted because if you want to see, Reggie is right off to the side here. You want to get down a little, Reggie? Okay. So we we brought in another friend of mine from high school, Tova Silberman, who was a manager now, and she'd been doing stand-up producing and stuff for a while. She used to produce the weekly show that I did with Griffin Newman, the Awooga Comedy Hour at the Pit, in which we've now been doing a version on Instagram Live every week. So we got in touch with the venue. They were mostly up for it. We got together some money for publicity also, and so that's how we got listed in the New York Times. We got listed, in some other places. And it was 3 nights, 3 shows a night, packed into this tiny biscuit shop. Every ticket came with like a biscuit sandwich and a drink. And there were some hiccups certainly, but I think it was a fun experience. It's a cool thing to have gone to do. And we had, if you can look at the poster, if you Google Empire Biscuit Comedy Festival, and a lot of those people are kind of like, kind of big now. I mean, some of them were big at the time, but you can see there's, you look at it, it's from 2015, and it's sort of like the more well-known people further up, and then as it goes down, but like a lot of them would be on the top now. I don't know. That sounds like bragging, but it was neat. It was a cool experience.
Awesome. I love festivals that are in one venue and still keeps everyone like from leaving. But
Yeah.
like I've been to like a bunch of like music festivals, and but their stages are so far apart, and like some bands overlap each other that are your favorites. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna have everyone just have their shine, and it's just easy to set up that way too. So but man, it's pretty awesome. I can't wait to look at the poster and see who was all on the lineup because I'm really like just excited to see it now. So I'll definitely
Yeah.
Google it
Well, I hope
after
I'm
this
not
show's over.
overselling it, but definitely take a look.
Absolutely, indeed. And so, speaking of comedy collectives that you were a part of, you were also part of One Group Mind, and you performed with house teams, Moses Supposes and Windy City. And how did you come up with the names, and how did everything come together?
Yeah, so that's One Group Mind is, or was, I think still is. I'm not totally sure because we were in Chicago for a few years. We moved back to Brooklyn now, And sorry, I'm realizing I probably should have shaved beforehand. There's all sorts of things, but I was trying to hide my double chin as best as I can. We so there was this while I was in Chicago, because I'd never really done much improv here. I did it a little bit here and there. It's always something I had fun with, but I was always kind of hesitant. I don't like it as much as I like stand up, and also the structure of it is kind of, I think, more predatory. I think even people who might like it would probably acknowledge that the structure around it is kind of more predatory, just because stand up, I mean, there's predatory aspects of stand up, especially in New York, with like bringer shows and you know, stuff like that. But improv, you really, if you want to advance in it, you kind of have to pay a lot of money to do classes. And so the neat thing about One Group Mind was that you would audition, and then if you pass the audition, you would do like 12 weeks in a row of classes, and then you would start performing with a house team, and then you would just pay $50 a month, and you would get other benefits from that. I actually used that space to debut That's So Tavin, the one-man variety show, which I have only done twice now, because I was supposed to do a third time, and then I don't know if you've seen the news, but the pandemic happened. But I'm hoping later this year to start that up again. So I was on the team. So the naming conventions of the teams, but they all had to rhyme. So what was the first one? Moses Supposes. So that was a team of other people in my class. So we were sort of assigned into teams, and then for various reasons, there was some restructuring, and I was put on an already existing team. I think the dynamic I had with the first team, Moses Supposes, worked a bit better, and we definitely I had some good experiences there. I think if we hadn't moved, I'd already kind of, even before we moved, I kind of decided that I'd had enough of that particular experience, though I'm glad I did it, and it was nice doing some good improv shows. Improv, it's always, I've kind of said, like, I think there is a very high ceiling for both stand-up and improv. There's almost, I'd say there might even be a higher ceiling for like really good improv. Like, people rag on improv, and I think one of the reasons is because it needs to be so good to be good at all. Like, I think if you watch mediocre stand-up, it's watchable. Like, there's a lot of mediocre stand-up out there, and you're like, all right, this is fine. Like, it's like watching like a mediocre sitcom. But mediocre improv is just bad. Like, it's just like, it needs to be so good to be good. And when you see, like, if you go to, like, I mean, I guess now maybe it's closed, but if you see like a really good show at IO or at somewhere like there, like a long form show where like they really know what they're doing, and they have like everything is calling back to everything else. And I think there is a different expectation, because the idea that they're making it up on the spot is something that's like, oh, this is neat. It's sort of like we're all in this together, and the audience kind of wants to see them succeed. Whereas with stand-up, I feel like there's more of this confrontational aspect where it's like, well, you prepared something, so like this better be good. And the other reason, I mean, I think that I sort of have this theory of kind of the hierarchy of performance arts, obviously not comprehensive, where I think being a musician, it's pretty rare that you're gonna see a really and again, to me, anecdotally, I haven't done research and statistics on this, But I think like anecdotally, it's pretty rare that you're going to see just a terrible musician performing somewhere. I mean, maybe if you go to an open mic, someone's trying out, but like if you go to like a show, it's like, because for the most part, a person knows if they can play an instrument or not. It's I know I cannot at all play any instrument. And I tried once to learn guitar in like 6th or 7th grade, and I just couldn't. I mean, maybe I could if I stuck with it, but it was just completely unintuitive for me. And for the most part, people understand, okay, I can't play a musical instrument. So then the next sort of step down is you have singing, which people, because you can hear that your musical instrument sucks, but a lot of times you think you sound okay when you're singing, even if you don't, because you hear your own voice very differently to what other people do. So you might say, well, I can't play a musical instrument. I know I can't, but I can probably sing. But at the same time, at some point, someone can say to you, like, well, you just can't, right? Like, look, enough people say, like, hey, you can't sing. And that's still a skill that most people accept. Like, some people can sing, you can take singing lessons and you can work on it. Most people accept that, like, yeah, some people are good singers and some people aren't. And then you get to stand up. And stand up, a lot of people would say, well, I can't sing, but I mean, I can talk. I'm funny. I can make people laugh. And so even though you can't sing, you can talk. And obviously stand-up is more than just talking. You have to, theoretically you want to say things that people will enjoy and laugh at. But on a basic level, you can talk and you can probably write. But that's the other thing, because on some level then you can be like, well, I would do stand-up, but I can't really write material. Like, I've tried. Like, oh, I'm funny in the moment. Like, I can make people laugh. Like, I've tried to write material. It doesn't work. Someone might say, I tried to write material and it works. Great. But someone might say, oh, I know that for stand-up I have to write material and I can't write material. Even though I can talk, I can say words, I can't write material. And so then you get to improv and people are like, well, I can't write material, but like, I can talk and make things up. Anyone can make things up. And so the point of that sort of like hierarchy in my head that I've just observed anecdotally isn't that playing an instrument is actually more difficult than singing, which is actually more difficult than stand-up, which is actually more difficult than improv. I mean, of those, doing improv very well, I mean, I don't know. I assume for people who it comes to, playing an instrument, I mean, it takes a lot of practice, but is something enough people can attain a passable level of playing an instrument that I think it's, versus the number of people who are like passable at improv. Like, the irony of that is, of all those things, improv might be one of the hardest to actually do well, but it's the one that everyone thinks they can do because there's no hard cutoff that makes you say, well, I am unable to do this. Like, obviously you could do 50 improv shows and go, none of those went well if you're self-aware. A lot of people aren't, and it doesn't go well and they don't know. But if you're self-aware, you go, well, I did 50 improv shows and they all went terrible. Clearly, I'm not good at this. But there's no hard cutoff where you're like, no one is like, I bet I could play guitar, and just goes on stage for the first time and is like, yeah, this is close enough, right? Like, that's what I'm saying. And for each of them, there's some definitive point where you would know. And for improv, there's not, even though it's kind of the hardest. And so it's also a team thing, which is interesting because I think a lot of people also like that more than stand-up. They like the idea that they're not up there alone. But I don't know. I think I prefer the sort of freedom of being able to adjust stuff on your own and you still need to rely on an audience to get it, but you get both the setup and the punchline. So, I think I had just kind of I don't know exactly what they're up to now, but I kind of ran its course. Glad I did it. But, and I think it's fun. Sometimes I've done a stand-up show where part of the thing is they're like, and now we're going to do an improv game with all the comedians, halfway through. We're going to do like, I don't know if you know, like the improv game, Sex With Me is like, where people So it's like it's one of those like short form whose line is it anyway style improv games where someone gives an object and you say like you know they'll say whatever soda can. Sex with me is like a soda can. Uh, you don't want to leave it out overnight or else it just kind of sucks. Whatever. Like, and you go in line, you do that. So I've done like shows where you kind of do short improv games or even like a scene. And, that's fun, honestly, when it comes up. But it's high risk, medium reward because there's just nothing more painful than bad improv. And, even with bad stand up, if a show's not going well, you can really pull the ripcord and just go, all right, well, whatever the fuck. You guys don't like this. What do you want to hear about? What are you doing? Who are you? And at least you're just like, all right, well, abandon ship. I had a whole set I wanted to do. Clearly it's not working for you. What do you want to talk about? And what we're doing, I can interact with you directly, even though I would have rather just done my set. I can at least now have a conversation. And at the very least, we can have a back and forth. We can have a discussion about something. It can turn into whatever if it's going really bad. When improv's going really bad, you just have to keep going. You can't suddenly be like, you know what? We're not doing improv anymore. We're just going to ask you if you saw any movies recently and talk about. Like, you just can't do that the way you can with stand-up, where you can just be like, hey, all right, clearly you guys aren't in the mood for this. Did anyone see Uncut Gems? That was neat. Did you like the part where whatever? Which whatever, that's something. People would go do that at a party, talk about Uncut Gems, but like, yeah, when improv's not going well, you're like, well, it's just another 20 minutes of the most uncomfortable experience anyone in the room is having, which there should be, I think, some sort of eject button for long form improv, the same way you can for stand-up, where you should just be able to go like, I don't know, 7 minutes in, you go, this is bad and we're not saving it. This is now, I don't know, a discourse on the war in Syria. Just anything less painful than how that scene was going.
Most definitely. Indeed. Yeah. And it's, I love, like, I did a show called Hotspot in Jacksonville where we had to pick 2 topics. It's kind of like Setlist Stand Up Without a Net. And we just drew out 2 topics. And my topics were bag raccoons and cruise ships. And so I had to make a different set, like a completely different set just with those 2 topics. And it's a lot of fun. I'll have to send it to you. It's
definitely.
Interesting.
I did something like that at Motor City Comedy Festival. I don't remember exactly what the topics I got were, but I remember it was fun. And I'm like, that's also the upside of improv. Like I said, the expectations are different. People really want it to work. And if you do anything that like kind of works, they're like, oh, good, something worked. Yeah, definitely.
Indeed. And in high school, you were hired to write sketch comedy videos, and you showed them at bar mitzvah parties. And do you still do and write sketch show comedy videos and all that good stuff for those parties?
Yeah, well, not for bar mitzvah parties. Did I? I feel like I discussed this last time. Did I?
I think so too. I might have. That one was probably. Yeah, I think it was because I put it in order of like. In order of what you went through, like through your comedy journey.
Yeah, so people can check out. I can talk about the sketch stuff I've done more recently. People can check out if they want to see about me in high school writing at Jewish school, writing videos, kind of comedy sketches starring bar mitzvah kids. They can see that. But so I'm trying to keep the light in the right place so I don't go into shadow. So past that, I had I was part of a sketch team in college. We wrote a bunch of sketches. We filmed like 3. We released 1. And then later on, I did, one of my first jobs I ever got out of college was I got to write this web series for the National Retail Federation through an agency called Rain. And that was is sort of this like, it's called Interview Day because it's for their job boards. People can check out NRF Interview Day if they want. I think it's still up. I'm not actually credited on it, which I kind of have always been a little whatever about, but I did write it, so it's it's fun for a ad-based thing. I guess they don't tend to credit people on ads. It's not like you watch, a Swiffer ad, and at the end they're like, written by so and so, story by so and so, technical consultant. So then I did some sketches for Pit TV, which because I was doing that show with Griffin at the Pit, People's Improv Theater, which is not open anymore. That recently shut down, like during the pandemic. And I had I submitted a packet to write for this weekly web series Pit TV was doing called Who Won the Internet, and I was writing for that. And that was sort of like a under 2 minutes kind of internet-based news monologue show, sort of. It was mostly monologue. There were like little character bits too. It was like a weekly current events of the internet kind of comedy thing. And then we pitched a writing partner and I, Casey Turgeson. So we pitched some sketches for Pit TV, which is was their online arm. So one of them was an idea she had come up with, and then we worked on it together called Boy Scout Cookies, which is fun. I think if you search Boy Scout Cookies Pit TV, you can probably find it. We did one called Criminal, which is about, I guess I'll give away the twist of the sketch. That's about a guy who is, he's being interrogated, or the DA is trying to get him to make a deal, and his defense attorney is encouraging it. And the whole thing is just that it's him claiming that all these murders he did were justified, but he ate all of the people afterwards. And they're trying to get him to explain how he can think that's justified. And then we did one called like All New Avengers movie sneak peek, which is people can check that out. They find Pit TV and whatever. Some of the views are a little lower on YouTube because at the time they were using this, they were like being First Look hosted and trying to direct all the traffic to the site called Vessel, which I do not know if it's still around, which was, offering some kind of deal. I mean, a lot of these video sites and stuff and the pivot to video, these things lasted like months, who knows. And then we filmed another comedian friend of mine, Alex Patak, and I filmed a web series called Crunch Time Talk Show for Pit TV, which sadly Pit TV kind of stopped between us filming it and it being released. Eventually we were able to get it all edited. So that's up. You can check that on my website. It's one of the tabs. And I still think that was really fun and I'm proud of it. So, people go to the website, check out Crunch Time Talk Show. It also does not have very many views, but I like it. It's quick. You can watch them all in 14 minutes. The gist of that is every episode, I'm the talk show host and Alex is the band leader. And for a different reason, every single episode, we need to wrap up the show. What is posited to be an hour-long nightly talk show in 2 minutes. So, each time there's a different reason where it's like, sorry, we're going to have to cut the show short. And they're each 2 minutes long. So go watch that.
Indeed. And you also...
Oh, I was going to say also, and I'm currently working with Casey, who we did those Pit TV stuff with on an audio sketch show called Sound Snacks, which is going to be 4 episodes. We started working on that towards the beginning of the pandemic, and it is going to release in the next couple months, which I think I said a couple months ago. We, you know how these things go, but it's on its way. We're deep in the editing process. We have all the recording done, so awesome. Look out for Sound Snacks.
Indeed. And you also provided content for College Humor. And what was that like working with College Humor?
So we actually, the video was selected or promoted on College Humor. So I didn't actually work with College Humor directly, but we did this video. I wrote for a website called The Daily Dolt, I think while I was still in college. And it was a political satire website, ostensibly. It was, it didn't last particularly long for various reasons. But we did a sketch that actually got decent numbers that I think you can still see on YouTube. And so it's on YouTube, Funny or Die, College Humor. And it's called Gray Marriage. And it was before this, like, it's wild to think because some things get better, some things get worse. This was before gay marriage was legalized by the Supreme Court across the country. So that's an example of things getting better. Lots of other things getting worse at the time of recording. I don't know. When we release, maybe everything will be great. Who knows? Wouldn't that be nice? In a couple weeks, turns out everything's fixed. But we so we did this ad, and the gist of it was there was an argument being posited, and this might even been as the case Obergefell v. Hodge was making its way up the courts. I don't know if it was while the Supreme Court was hearing it, but it was like leading up to Supreme Court case. So it might have been a lower court or something. And one of the arguments that was being posited against gay marriage was that gay people cannot naturally have children, and so so they shouldn't be allowed to get married. And so, of course, there was a counter argument which said that, well, lots of people can't have children. They're allowed to get married. Old people can't have children. So it was an ad, like a political ad against gray marriage, like old people marriage. And it's fun. I think it holds up. I haven't watched it in a while, but if people want to look at gray marriage ad, I think other stuff pops up first, but it's, it got like decent reach. It was featured on some stuff, and I play a kid in it. I co-wrote it, and I play a kid in it who comes home and is upset because his school has taught him that some people are old and they can get married, and the parents are like upset. And the my favorite line in it, I think, was people want you to think that getting old. Wait, I'm trying to remember it. People should look it up. Look it up. Hey, if you want to know what the line is, look it up. We had an ending that we ended up not. We had one of the actors, I think it was supposed to. We had to cut the ending of it and change it because turned out he was SAG and he didn't tell us at the time. We were like, oh, you can't be in this. Yeah, so check that out if you want. I was also, there were a couple other sketches I was in that were featured on like Funny or Die and College Humor. There's one BuzzFeed intervention, which I don't know how well my performance is in that. That was for a sketch group called Scooch Comedy that asked me to play BuzzFeed, which was nice of them because probably bigger people they could have gotten, but whatever, they're doing well. One of them was Luke Monez. He's a very funny comedian. He's been featured on Comedy Central, StandUp, Digital. He's check out Luke Monez, Mones. He's a very funny comedian.
Awesome, will do, most definitely. You've also worked with content head you had on Spark Life, and what was that like?
Yeah, so Spark Life is I don't know what they're still up, but they are like the fun side of Spark Notes, the site that everyone knows for for book summaries, I guess, for students and study materials. And so I wrote a bunch of articles for them and for their sister/brother site Mind Hut. Which if you look up, I wrote quizzes also. It's like a lot of fun stuff. It's kind of targeted towards teens. It's all kind of there was also a humor site called The Spark that they had, which I wrote some pieces for that. Um, and that was for a little while. I was actually in like 2014, I was making like most of my income because I would just submit a bunch of pitches to write for them. And I was writing like probably an article a day for them. And then they kind of changed the editors and they were like, you can't write this many. And I was like, okay. And, you know, I mean, to be fair, probably a lot of them, I don't know. I don't know if they were all up to snuff, but I was like, I got to write as many as I can to have money. But, you know, that's fun. They're, people can check it out if they want. It's, you know, like I said, it's targeted towards a slightly younger demographic. I also wrote, I don't know if it's on my bio, but I wrote for Brain Pop, which I might add that. I don't know why I hadn't thought to. I guess because I considered it, I sort of kept like day job stuff, even though my day job stuff is like a kind of writing off of that, that was an educational service that apparently like a younger generation knows pretty well. Like it's in schools, and I guess for a certain age of kid, not that much younger than me, like I guess pretty much for people like 5 to 7 years younger than me and younger than that, they seem to know Brain Pop because I've had like if I'm wearing the shirt or something like, bro, Brain Pop. And I was like, yeah, I wrote for Brain Pop. Like, you wrote for Brain Pop? But when I started writing for Brain Pop, I hadn't really heard of it because I guess it was, you know, not around when I was in school exactly, or at least wasn't as popular as it became. So I did that. I wrote a bunch of content for one of their games called Time Zone X. So if you have a Brain Pop login and you play Time Zone X, maybe I wrote some of those cards on the timeline.
Awesome. And these are the questions I wanted to ask you, Andrew, because I was hoping to go on tour, but you know the news. They told you we got a pandemic around here. So
Yeah.
so these were the questions I wanted to ask you, and I was hoping to go on tour. So with that being said, Andrew, what inspired you to perform stand-up comedy?
Wow. So well, I think one of the big things when I was in high school, I used to watch a lot of like stand up late at night on Comedy Central or whatever. And really, Eugene Merman was kind of one of the first comedians who there were other ones I liked, but I saw what he was doing and I was like, I want to do that. I want to do something like that. Like, I think there was the absurdity and kind of the whimsy of it. That it wasn't just like, I like Dimitri Martin a lot when I was in, you know, I still think he's very talented. I feel like he's someone who people want to think they've like outgrown and they're like, oh, Dimitri Martin, it's just like clever one-liners or whatever. It's like, yeah, he's good. You know, I get that people sort of get to a point where they're like, oh, I want something that's deep and meaningful or politically charged, but like, it's good. Why not? You don't need to, doesn't all need to be, wow, I'm blanking on the person I wanted to say. George, you know, let's say George Carlin. You know, but Eugene Merman was one where it's like, I think the specific kind of absurdity, I was like, oh, that's really fun. I want to do stuff like that. And I started writing stand up in a notebook I had, and I'd want to do an open mic. I was in Memphis in school, and there wasn't really anywhere I could do it until I was 18. So I ended up starting right when I came to New York for college. And I did get to sort of technically speaking, the first time I performed was we had a class in my senior year that we just had to work on a creative project the whole semester. So I wrote a half hour's worth of stand-up, not particularly good stand-up, but a half hour's worth of stand-up and performed it for my class, which was nice just to have done. I had a friend who recorded it. I should check with him and see if he has it. I doubt he does, but I'd be kind of fascinated if he does. Because I would want to look back at that and see. I think that could be fun to present, maybe. And so I did that. I remember one of the bits I had found. I think I used to drive my mom's minivan in high school, or her former minivan, because I guess she got a new car. And once bumped up against another car. No one was hurt, thankfully. And then when they repaired it, they left this piece on the inside of the car for some reason. And so I used that for a bit. I was like, they left this, and it was like this big. It's like a heavy, like, looks like a spring with something else on it. Maybe it's some kind of suspension. And I was just like, it looks like they kidnapped my robot wife for gambling debts and are trying to send me a message. It's one of the few jokes I remember. Not great. And it required a prop, a very specific prop. There was a whole extended riff on the movie Teeth, which actually I feel like is almost like a little kind of Dane Cookie. So there's a movie Teeth about a woman with vagina dentata who has teeth in her vagina, and so I did like a whole trailer about a movie called Machine Gun, about a guy whose penis has a machine gun. Just a long, like, don't remember all of it. I think it was like a 3-minute long bit, but look, when you're trying to write a whole half hour in high school.
Indeed, most definitely. And what was the feeling like when you first performed stand-up?
I mean, that one was definitely good. It was good. It was nice doing it. My first time in at a mic once I got to New York was also, I was definitely nervous. I went through so quickly the host. It was at Comics in New York, which closed down a few years after I started. And not because of me, as far as I know, but and I had the material together. I'm trying to remember the jokes I did the first time I did stand up. I remember one about stealing the money from those people who pose as statues. I don't remember the setup or punchline from it. It doesn't seem like the kind of thing I'd right now and be like, well, why would you do that? I had one. I don't think this was one I wrote that early. I know it was an early joke. About the homeless people who have the signs that say not gonna lie, I just want to buy beer. And I said, how funny would it be if they spent your money on heroin? Which is that's actually still kind of fine, but it's also I started, the more I went on, the more I kind of try and balance is it funny enough that I'm invoking homeless people and whatever? It's not even anyone's ever said to me hey man, don't make fun of homeless people. I don't think people give me a hard time, but I'm just I don't know that you sort of, there's certain things that you see and you're kind of there was a great interview with Anthony Jeselnik where he talks about how his material has kind of changed. And one thing that's interesting is they're oh, you don't tell this kind of joke as much anymore. Do you feel you don't I don't know, you feel you're have to censor yourself or whatever? That's it. He's no, it's not that. It's that he's I don't care. People can say whatever they want about me and I'll say whatever I want. He's but you get more on in life and you meet different kinds of people who the kind of things you might have joked about happen to them and it just doesn't feel the same to you anymore, which is fine. But yeah, the first time I did stand up, I went very quick. The host called me Bullet Man afterwards. It's how fast I went, but it went pretty well, all things considered. I was because I was the first time they tell you you're going to bomb, and it actually went pretty well. And then I don't know, the next time I bombed. So
Indeed.
oh, okay.
You spoke of Dimitri Martin and George Carlin in your first answer. I want to know what your other favorite comedy specials and comedy record albums are.
Oh, I actually wouldn't hold. I think George Carlin's such an interesting one because he says a lot of stuff that's right and interesting, but then a lot of it's not all that funny, which is fine because there's also stuff that is very funny. And I think the idea that the laughs per minute idea that some people hold up, I think is so ridiculous. If you watch something and you like it, and you laughed less times than something that was more like punchy, but you didn't like it as much, like, who cares? What does it matter? Like, people sometimes like to make fun of and look, there's a lot of bad musical comedy, but people sometimes try and make fun of like musical comedy regardless, because they're like, well, how much are you laughing and how much are you going, oh, that's clever. But a lot of times you might enjoy it more. Like when you're like, wow, that was a really clever, funny song. You're like, yeah, I enjoyed that more than I might have like some well-crafted but generic jokes about dating is weird. But I have a lot of I have like a lot of favorites. I feel like I applied to a festival recently that asked who are three of your favorite comedians. And I like really struggled with it. Part of it's also because you feel like when you're asked that for a festival, it's like they're gonna judge you based off that. So you put a good answer. For that, I put Eugene Merman. I always list Eugene Merman just because I don't know if he's still if there aren't people I like even more, but there's just something about him specifically that he'll just kind of always be my favorite, because he was the one who first showed me that stand-up could be a specific different kind of thing. And that's not to say that he's the first one who did that, because of course there were, also, I mean, like Steve Martin and Andy Kaufman, and Eugene Merman's not even like, you could say he's not even as weird, so to speak, as like Andy Kaufman. I mean, but there's just, I don't know, a lot of his bits that sort of, I sometimes think about the difference between bringing your audience to where you are and going to where your audience is, and both are valid and fine to do. There's a comedian, Billy Prinsell, who's so specific, and he might be one of my favorites. I'll toss him in with one of those. He's so specific, and I haven't seen him in forever. I don't know what he's been up to with the pandemic and everything. I think he was one of Comedy Central's comics to watch a few years ago, so I don't know if he's still working on stuff or whatever, but he's got this kind of sort of like gym bro persona, and he was a physical trainer also. And it's all the jokes are so specific, and they're not about relatable stuff. They're like this hyper specific stuff, but it's so specific that that's the joke, that you're like, this is, you get brought there. Like there's one where he talks about like meeting a girl at the gym, and it's just got this long setup, and he goes like, what's your favorite pre-workout supplement? And she goes like, Eno Explode. He's like, no way, I love Eno Explode so much, I put Eno Explode in my cereal or whatever. I'm not saying it right, but she's like, no way, I love Eno Explode so much, I use a sifter to separate the proteins from the whatever and put it in a humidifier, and I inhale Eno Explode every night. And it's like stuff of this conversation, and at the end of it, he just goes, do you want to go out for coffee sometime? And she said, I don't deserve coffee. And it's just like, I'm butchering it, trying to do it, but so he's great. Someone I'd say, I mentioned Luke Moniz. I like Aparna Nancherla a lot. I like Dina Hashem. I think they're all very funny. I mentioned Solomon Giorgio on the application. I also think he's very funny. I like Eric Andre. That feels like a weird. I don't know why that should feel like a weird example to give, but Joe Pera. There's. I'm trying to think of people I saw in Chicago also. If there's ones I can think of. Seton Smith, really funny. Paul F. Tompkins is great. I mean, that's a more, famous. I like to try because I sort of have this thing where I'm like, I whenever I'm asked about favorite comedians, part of me always wants to give, Julio Torres, him. Casey James Salengo. I like to give names, Jacqueline Novak's, right, that are like less big, because I sort of feel like the regular population, so to speak, knows like Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock. I mean, Jim Gaffigan now is pretty big, and he's great. He'd be one of my favorites. Um, and then you get to like people who are like, oh, I'm a comedy fan. I know like, trying to think of someone who's specific. I mean, John Mulaney is great too. He's up there. He's not quite as big as some of those others, but someone's like, oh, I'm a comedy fan. I love Tom Segura. I don't know, someone who's like not a household name necessarily, but like a little lower. But then there's like people who only people who like obsessively follow stand up, or like other comedians who are on their way up know of. Or someone sees them on TV and it's like, oh, that person's great, or they catch them on Comedy Central's YouTube. So like people know who they are, but there's not like a unified mass of people as much. So I always want to try and give answers of people who like, or only have like one TV appearance or something. So that was a range of people, right? Did
I'd say so.
that's a decent range.
Yep. Yeah, I love Casey, like James Salingo. He was here
Yeah.
in Daytona Beach, and I got to interview him, and so I'll have to send you that link too. And so some of the guys that you mentioned were on TV and film. Some with one appearance, like you said. Which are your favorite sitcom sketch shows and comedy films?
Ooh, okay. Let's see. Really like Veep. I think 30 Rock's pretty great. Arrested Development is great. I think the first 3 seasons. The fourth one that came back with Netflix is not as bad as some people say it is. The fifth one is even worse than people say it is. Unwatchable. Last season of Arrested Development, especially the second half of that fifth. Ooh, hey, sorry, is even worse than people say it is. We watched You're the Worst, which I highly recommend. We watched during the pandemic. It's on Hulu if people have. That's a really fun show. It's got some great comedian cameos. It's got Johnny Pemberton, Paul F. Tompkins, and Doug Benson are all in it. And Doug Benson is playing this like he like plays this version of himself that owns like an entertainment empire, and he hires one of the characters to write for him, and the character is like, should we smoke up a joint to celebrate? And Doug Benson just stares at him and goes, this is a place of work. You're the Worst is great. Search Party, that's pretty fun. Check that out. Watch The Tick on Amazon. Griffin Newman co-host, stars in that. I'll link of the third season, so maybe don't. I don't know. Don't watch it in other ways if you can, or don't. Or maybe he gets residuals if you watch on Amazon. If he does, then watch on Amazon. Just watch on Amazon. Even though they're bad and they, what are you gonna do? They rule the world. That's other TV. Just finished watching all of Frasier, which it's nice to have certain sitcoms. We started watching New Adventures of Old Christine that are nice just to have as easy watching, sort of. Movie wise, I like Walk Hard. Popstar Never Stop Stopping, very good. And underrated. A lot of those Andy Samberg ones are pretty underrated. MacGruber, that's fun. I think the original Austin Powers holds up decently. I mean, a lot of these have stuff that doesn't hold up, but honestly, that might hold up better. I really liked Blockers, which came out a couple years ago. Borat 2 was much better than I thought it'd be. Did not expect that to be great. I kind of really got burnt out on the whole Judd Apatow improv style of comedy, so I'm glad that written comedy seems to be coming back. So that's nice. Yeah. Anchorman, I think Talladega Nights is slightly underrated. What else? What are some other comedies that came out recently? I feel like I give thumbs up or thumbs down. I mean, it comes up. Some. It's very interesting which comedies catch on with the greater public, right? Because like The Hangover was this big phenomenon, and like I don't know, The Hangover's fine. I like a lot of the people. And I like Zach Galifianakis, and it's fine. It's just interesting that was this big breakthrough hit. Didn't really like Top 5. That got incredible reviews, and I was like, trying to think. What else I've seen that I really liked? Oh, during the pandemic, I liked Fire Saga. I like Palm Springs. I loved Sorry to Bother You. That was one of my favorite movies of the last 5, 10 ever. I mean, I think that I saw Sorry to Bother You in theaters when it came out, and it jumped into my top 5. I know it's not for everyone necessarily. It's pretty incredible that it was Boots Riley's first film that he wrote and directed, especially directed, because normally people don't get to just direct the first film they write. It's one of those movies where I think you have to at least be somewhat politically sympathetic to it. Like, I think you can watch movies that have a theoretically conservative point of view or a theoretically left-like point of view. Like, a lot of movies aren't super politically committed. Like, a movie might be a little like conservative in the way it's like the army's good and we should watch out for this foreign invasion, which, okay, that's somewhat conservative leaning, most people would say. In some movies, the bad guy's the big company that wants to buy out the rec center, and like, okay, well, that's theoretically left leaning, but it's never feels like it's super left leaning. Sorry to Bother You is just very explicit and it's left politics, which I love. But if someone isn't at least like, I don't know that you need to agree with all of the sort of ideas it has about the solutions to still enjoy it. I mean, I kind of do. I don't think it spoils. I can say it's very pro-union. It's very pro-organizing. Organizing labor, trying to keep management power in check, which I think is all very important. I think even someone who might not be as left, but who still agrees that, there's a problem with bad companies could maybe watch it and go like, well, yeah, I enjoyed that. But I mean, if you're someone who thinks that like you're totally into free enterprise, you're totally super pro capitalism, super pro business rights, we need to give rich people tax breaks so they'll hire more poor people, and poor people need to get a better job, and the minimum wage is just a stepping stone to get a real job, and it's for teenagers. If you think that, I think you would hate. I can't imagine get it. It's like if I was to watch for that person. It's like if I was to watch like the funniest Nazi movie, like a great like Lenny Riefenstahl comedy. I'd be like, well, I can't get past this, what it is. So like I get that if you're not left at all, you would watch Sorry to Bother Me, or not even sympathetic, and be like, Sorry to Bother You, Sorry to Bother Me. That should be the sequel. You'd watch it and be like, well, I can't get past this movie's politics. But I mean, I completely agree with the movie's politics. And I think even people who are only not off put by it might be, but it's also did you see it? Sorry, I've been rambling on. Have you seen Sorry to Bother You?
Nope.
All right. So again, it takes some real left turns, not just politically, but in the plot, which some people didn't like. I think it's incredibly funny though, and I think it's great. I would recommend it unless you feel like the politics would rub you the wrong way. Sorry to Bother You is I'm gonna say my favorite comedy film and one of my favorite movies. Maybe it's just my favorite movie. I don't know why I get to say that. Nothing jumps to mind that I definitely would put above it. I have Parasite's a great. If Parasite counts as a comedy, I'll put that up pretty high. Also, it's tough to give it one genre. Reggie, sorry, that's Reggie. Whenever people pass by the door, he gets upset. Reggie, quiet. Quiet.
Indeed. And your favorite sketch shows?
Ooh, okay. My number one sketch show is I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson. That is far and away. I think it's. I don't know any sketch shows that have a 100% batting rate for me. I Think You Should Leave gets pretty close. I think You Should Leave is like 80 or 90%. It's still got some sketches that just don't, that kind of clang for me, which is just how it is. But I don't think there are any episodes that there's never more than one sketch that clangs for me per episode. And there are ones that are just all time that, so you've seen I Think You Should Leave. Yes? Okay.
Yep.
There's ones that my wife and I will just quote to. There are lines that we'll quote to each other, just like one of the biggest ones. The guy in the Ruben, I forget his last name, but Ruben, the guy in the car focus group, will quote a lot of that. A steering wheels that won't fly out the window when you're driving. That's when he says, it's like a minor line, but it's funny because we'll say to each other so much. There's a part where he goes, write that down. And then Tim Robinson goes, I did. And he goes, oh, nice. And we'll just say like, oh, nice to each other. Another favorite is Check It Out with Dr. Steve Brule. That's not really a sketch show, but we'll say, another line we'll say to each other all the time. There's an episode where he does on Family that he like interviews his brother, but it's like obviously him and he reveals that at the end. And there's just a part where his brother goes like, yeah, well, I already had a skateboard, so I got myself a jetpack. And he just goes, really? And we'll just say, really? To each other like that. Yeah, I Think You Should Leave. The one with Patty Harrison, also the copier sketch. The one with and that was the night the skeletons came to life. The bones are their money. We'll say that to each other all the time. The hot dog guy, which just everyone shares on Twitter very appropriately, of like, we're all trying to find out the guy who did this. That has one of my favorite moments because it is interesting to me sometimes, even though people say you shouldn't, to dissect what makes a joke work. And there's a great part in that where it plays with expectations that kind of it assumes the viewer has seen sketch comedy before, which is interesting because a lot of times you want a joke and be like, oh, anyone can watch this. But there's a part in it where the guy, you're familiar with the sketch, right? With the guy at the hot dog car plows through. So if anyone, watch it if you haven't listened to this. But there's a part where she goes, there because he's dressed like a hot dog and the hot dog car plowed through and they're like, well, you're dressed like a hot dog. And he points to another guy who kind of has like a red shirt with a yellow tie and brown pants. And he goes, well, so is that guy. And and the guy reacts like, oh man, like I am. And you expect suddenly the sketch is going to be like, oh, they're all going to turn on him. But the woman who's talking to him immediately shuts it down the way a normal person would and goes, well, he might be dressed like a hot dog, but you're in a hot dog costume. And there's something very funny about playing with the expectations where you set up the expectation of like, uh-oh, and then the person reacts in a normal human way. And a lot of the humor, I think You Should Leave is switching very cleverly between having people react in a heightened sketch way and then suddenly having them react like a normal human and just interspersing that. And that's kind of a big secret of the show and kind of going back and forth. And they have other ones where everyone reacts like a normal human and then suddenly they react weird. Other sketch shows, I think Mr. Show is, one of the greatest of all time for a reason. Very good. I did not really like the new Netflix show they came back with, unfortunately. We watched like 2 episodes and I was like, I just didn't like any of the sketches in it, which I don't know. Hey, I love their Mr. Show's got some amazing classics. They shouldn't feel bad. They're both doing all right. What other sketch shows? A lot, I mean, you know, it's tough. Sketch shows can be really hit or miss. I think there's, you know, SNL through the years is even recently will still sometimes come out with something good. And I know some of the people who write for it and are on it, and I think that the writing staff is incredibly talented. It's just you know, it's the nature of the job that they have to put out a certain sort of thing that isn't necessarily what they would put out if they were given free reign. I mean, you look at I Think You Should Leave, which I think Tim Robinson said, like a lot of those were sketch pitches that were rejected from SNL, and you go, why would you reject any of these? I mean, even the ones I didn't like that much were probably better than like 80% of SNL's output, which again is very different because they have to put together a full show every single week. And I will happily strike all of that from the record if I'm hired by SNL. But that's up, balls in your court, Lorne.
Indeed. So we're at the hour mark, and we only have a few questions left. So
All right,
we'll breeze right through them.
Let's do lightning round. All right.
Awesome. So, if you can go on tour with comedians locally and internationally known, which comedians would you like to go on tour with?
International. I'd love to. I talked to a friend of mine, Alex Patak, at some point. I think we talked about maybe doing some kind of tour together. I'd love to still do that post COVID. I don't know if Griffin's planning to. I'd love to ever do something like that with Griffin, perform live again. I don't know what he's planning to do pandemic wise. But Alex, I think he's really funny, and Alex Patak have fun together. I mean, I'd love to open for Eugene Merman one day. That'd be incredible. I mean, it's probably, the thing is, rightfully so, I think people understand that if you're a white dude like Eugene Merman, you probably don't just want another Jewy white dude opening up for you, just because you want people. I mean, that's one of the things when people talk about, like, you know, certain people who like rag on, you know, having diverse lineups or having someone like, it just, like, if you could find 6, you know, straight white dudes who all have a very different style, but like, to the audience, a lot of it will still get blended together, just because you're like, well, that's not what stuff looks like generally. Like, it's weird to be like, oh, well, sure, they have a different style, but they all are gonna blend together in someone's mind. So even without talking about, you know, before you even get into like levels of opportunity or counteracting missed opportunities or whatever, just the fact that, like, people will remember it better if they don't feel like everyone's the same. And like, I'd still love to open for Eugene Merman. Part of me is like, if he was ever going on tour again, which I don't think he's done a whole lot. I mean, he's had, you know, obviously difficulties in his life. But if he was ever going on tour, like, he'd probably pick someone where they'd be like, oh, that was neat. There was someone very different opening for him. And so I don't think that will ever happen for many reasons. But you know, I would certainly, like I said, he's a person that I'd come back to. It'd be a super cool thing if we're just dreamcasting.
Indeed. And if you can get roasted by 5 comedians, past and present, which comedians would you have to get roasted by?
Oh, wow. Oh man, I have I'm not big on roast stuff. I don't mind people roasting me. I hate roasting other people. Oh man. Mel Brooks. That'd be cool. I mean, that's not really a stand-up, but I'm gonna say Mel Brooks anyway. I don't know, Chris Rock. That'd be neat, because then you'd be in the same room as Chris Rock. He'd probably have funny stuff to say about me, my general appearance and demeanor. Joan Rivers. That works. All right. I'm all right with all these. I don't know, George Carlin, just because again, that'd be neat. And Lenny Bruce.
Fantastic lineup for sure.
Okay.
And what do you see your comedy journey in the next 5 years?
Geez. Oh, well, hopefully the pandemic's winding down. I mean, I have a few things that I kind of am near term trying to do. I mean, really near term, I've been doing some outdoor shows. I want to try and I'm talking to someone, a producer who maybe hopefully I'll be co-producing some shows with outdoors. I want to get that one-man variety show start up again. I'd really near term want to try and do that before the end of the year, get that going again. I don't know where, because it's like, it's if before pandemic, if I was here, I'd be like, well, here are some venues. I'll talk to people. I'll figure it out. And now it's like, where's even gonna be any place with a projector? I don't know where with a projector is gonna. I don't know if it's gonna be easier because people will be desperate to have whoever in. I don't know if it'll be harder because people will be desperate to be having spaces for stuff. But I want to try and do that, and then hopefully do Edinburgh Fringe fall of the following year. So we'll see. Maybe it's going to be put off an additional year. Maybe Scotland will secede and be its own country. Who knows what's happening? And obviously, I'd love to do like Montreal New Faces. I'd love to. I mean, 5 years. I would love to do a spot on like Comedy Central Digital or late night show. It's so weird. Those are dreams I've had for a long time, but now the landscape is changing so much that, is it going to get to a point where the thing people do is eventually you just get big enough doing something else and then self-release a special, and that's what you do? And like, maybe that's some things are trending that way. Like it certainly is not, the more broken up everything gets, the more that becomes an equal option with doing, like, I don't know, not to rag on Fuse, great that they've had stand-up. Anyone who has stand-up, great, do it. Let me do a spot. But like, I don't know, if you self-release a special and you manage to promote it, maybe even pay some money for publicity, and you get 5,000 people, and that's huge. I mean, 5,000 people, if you pay for it, if you whatever, to watch the special, that's enormous, especially like to watch a full half hour of a person they probably wouldn't have known about before. 5,000 people is huge. And you go, well, if you get 5,000 people to buy a special, if you can, is that much worse and lower than, doing a spot on Fuse at 3 a.m. on, the new Laugh Down or whatever? Like, I don't know. I still want to do a late night spot. I want to be on, like, at this point, I mean, Comedy Central, I'd always want to be on like the Live at Gotham type show, which they always had some Live at Gotham type show. And I feel like the most recent, they had Adam Devine's thing, they had Bill Burr's thing. I don't know what's going to be next, but a lot of it now is they just have people going to their digital platforms, and you go like, I mean, I don't know, if you do a spot for Comedy Central Digital, you're on their Facebook, you're on their Instagram, you're on their YouTube, you're on their website. Probably more people will see that than if you were just on like Live at Gotham back in the day and it wasn't uploaded online. Like, so I don't know. Maybe that's, I mean, I don't think the pay would be, I don't know exactly. I don't know if SAG applies.
Andrew froze up a little bit.
Oh, sorry. But anyway, yeah. So that was some of that stuff. I've also got I've got a feature. I just finished a new feature. I'm doing another pass on a pilot I wrote. I've been submitting that to writing festivals and stuff. I have a pilot I co-wrote that I kind of want to do a live reading of with some other people. So we'll see when and if that goes over. And and then the near term, Sound Snacks, that audio thing is coming out. Got a podcast called TV Nopes. Going to release the first episode this Tuesday. Got 3 more episodes already recorded, so check that out. Yeah.
Indeed. So you pretty much answered all of my questions in regarding to comedy. Like, which was the next question was, which other comedy ventures would you like to go off into, like improv, sketch, comedy writing, acting, directing? And pretty much says you've done it all. So, and
All right.
podcasting. So that's fantastic. So we'll go into the next one, which is, what is your favorite joke a comic has written?
That's tough. That's man. That's I'm trying to think. I feel like I should pick a Eugene Merman one. This is a quick one. I know it's my favorite, but one that always jumps to me that he goes, oh, they say kids say the darndest things, but so would you if you were uneducated. That's a quick one that I really like. I don't know if it's my favorite. I feel like I want to pick one from someone I know more personally, but another favorite is Julio Torres has a joke where he says, I'm going to do a series of impressions, and one of his is he goes, yes, I'm a kitty. I worry about no, I'm a Yeah, yes, I'm a kitty. I worry about kitty things like mice and my kitty wife and my kitty job. Hello, Mr. Psychiatrist. I'm a kitty. I worry about kitty, blah, blah, blah. And then he goes, that was Sofia Vergara captioning a New Yorker cartoon.
Awesome.
Um, yes, those are some. Joe Perra's got some great ones. He did a bit on Conan. If you watch one of his Conan ones where he asks the audience how tall his kid would be, he wants his kid to be, and they shout out answers, and he just goes, and eventually they get it, and he goes, I mocked up a picture. Do you want to see? And the audience member says, yes, the one who guessed right. And he shows it to her, and no one else can see it. He just takes it back. Yeah, you know who I was just thinking of that I would have mentioned also is now I'm blanking. Oh, Martin Urbano. He's got great stuff. There's so many people. Sorry, now I'm just naming comedians again. Anyway, I said a few. I said a few jokes I like.
For sure. And what experience would you like your audience to take with them after a set is over?
I want them to have fun. I want them to feel like they were smart, because I think people like to feel like they're smart, but I also want to be acceptable. I want everyone to feel like they're smart afterwards. I want people to feel excluded. So I kind of want I want to, calibrate it so everyone feels like they're kind of special for getting it. But everyone still gets it. And I want people to have fun. I think it's fine to want to dig deep and make people engage with like issues. And I have some jokes about abortion. I have a joke about, about the school I went to and one of the teachers telling us something about the Holocaust. I don't touch on serious stuff or whatever, but like, at the end of it, I want people to just have kind of a fun time. I like, to put some more whimsy into their evening, to walk away with more whimsy than they came.
Absolutely. Indeed. And I wanted to remind the audience at home that we're raising funds for the South Brooklyn Mutual Aid. And remind the folks at home why we're raising funds for those fine folks.
A lot of hungry people during the pandemic, unfortunately. And mutual aid organizations, I like the concept of, I think they don't necessarily function that differently from charities in our current system. I mean, they function very differently from some charities, whatever level of overhead and whatever. But I like the idea of everyone understanding that we're out there to help each other, and that one person shouldn't get to arbitrarily decide if other people eat or starve. So.
Indeed. And definitely donate to their cause. Their website's scrolling on the bottom as well, and it's located in the description box below. And also follow Andrew on Instagram and Twitter. Donate to his Venmo if you can, and go to his website to find out how you can book Andrew for your shows and book him and subscribe to his YouTube channel as well. And with that being said,
Yes,
Andrew, are there any final words you'd like to give out to the audience at
I'm.
home?
I am very lucky to be fully vaccinated. So book me. I'll come. I can even do it in person.
Awesome, fantastic.
Yeah.
You heard the man. So thank you so much, Andrew, for being my guest again today. And I'll put it on the website, the same web page that I did before. And I look forward to seeing you perform live in person wherever that may be. So
Yeah,
and
looking
for
forward
everyone,
to it. Also, it'll be great.
awesome. And for everyone else at home, thanks for tuning in. And we'll see you next time. Be safe, take care, and of each other. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Stand Up Speakeasy. Be well,
See you
everyone.
next time.
Awesome.